Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Picture the west of Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about the postcard version you see in, a souvenir shop.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the raw stuff. The limestone plateaus that look like the surface of the moon, those dry stone walls that seem to map out an eternity of labor, just keeping the wind at bay. And overhead, you've got the wild swans of Cool wheeling in the sky. It's a landscape that feels ancient.
W.B. Yeats. The wild swans of Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. You can almost feel that damp chill in the air just hearing it, can't you?
You really can. It just transports you. Suddenly you're there, you're on the edge of the water looking out at those, chaotic stone walls of the west of Ireland.
It's so atmospheric, and it's actually the perfect way to start what we're doing today.
It really is. Today, our mission is, it's a bit different. It's special. We are taking a deep dive into heritage, into a family story that was literally shaped by those windswept landscapes. And this isn't just a history lesson for us. This is, it's a celebration because January 29th, 2026 marks the 70th birthday of Anna de Marigny.
It does.
And this deep dive is essentially a birthday gift wrapped in audio.
A gift commissioned by her sister Sarah, I should add. And the wrapping paper, so to speak, is just incredible. We have been handed this stack of documents that, a genealogist would weep with joy over.
And to do that, we're not just looking at her life. We're looking at centuries of, resilience, chaos, hard work, and that very specific fighting Irish spirit that all came together to create her. We've got census records, old photos, court documents, which are...
Oh, they're hilarious.
They're amazing. And a ton of family lore.
And the one thing that really stands out when you look at all this is the landscape itself. We're talking about the wild Atlantic coast of Ireland. The soil, the weather, it dictated everything. How they lived, how they farmed, and why some of them just had to leave.
So to get you oriented, we have 4 key family lines to track. We've got the Crows, the Fahys, the Maloneys, and the Duffys.
Sounds like a pretty rowdy pub band.
It really does.
But before we get to the pub, and trust me, looking at these court records, we will get to the pub. We need to start with the land. We have to go back to the oldest ancestor in the records, a man named Stephen Fahey.
Okay, let's unpack Stephen. The dates here are pretty striking.
They are. Stephen Fahey was born in 1796. Just think about that for a second. 1796.
I mean, America's barely a country. George Washington is still president.
And in Ireland, the political tension is sky high. You have the French Revolution's influence everywhere, and the United Irishman Rebellion is only 2 years away. It was a time of huge agrarian unrest.
Right. And usually when you think of Irish tenant farmers from that era, you picture extreme poverty, just scraping by.
A mud hut, a potato patch.
Exactly. But looking at the Griffith valuation from 1855, Stephen wasn't exactly that, was he?
No, not at all. And this is a really key point. For anyone who doesn't know, the Griffith valuation was this massive property survey, basically to figure out who owed taxes.
A gold mine for researchers.
A total gold mine. And when you look up Stephen Fahey, he was a big deal in Ballindooley. The records show he rented over 81 acres from a Lord Clenmorris.
81 acres. That's huge for a tenant farmer.
Plus 11 purchase, to be precise. And he was paying £26 a month in rent.
That is serious capital for the mid-19th century. That's not pocket change.
Not even close. I mean, a laborer back then might make a shilling a day, maybe.
Yeah.
Stephen had the largest rented holding of all the tenants in the area. He even had a house and an office listed.
An office on a farm in 1855.
Right. Now, office probably meant outbuildings, like barns or stables, but it still implies an operation. This guy was a man of substance. He was surviving, maybe even thriving, in a really tough system.
So that's the anchor in the soil. But then we see that classic pattern, right? The move from the farm to the town.
Exactly. With his son, Patrick Fahey. This is Anna's great-grandfather.
And he represents that shift from the rural to the urban.
Right. He leaves Ballindooley in 1881, marries Bridget Tonery, and they move to Galway City. Number 41 Eyre Street.
I looked up Eyre Street on an old map. That feels like a very strategic location.
Oh, incredibly strategic. Eyre Street was the main artery. It connects Eyre Square, the transport hub, to Woodquay, the old riverside trading area. If you're opening a business, that is exactly where you want to be.
And he's not farming anymore.
Nope. He was a miller. The census lists him as owning a shop that sells flour. He's literally feeding the growing city. It's a whole different skill set from his father.
Okay, but we have to talk about the other Fahey on the street. Because while Patrick is the respectable businessman, his brother, Stephen.
The younger Stephen, yeah. just to keep it confusing.
He was doing something a bit different just a few doors down.
He was. He owned a pub, a public house.
And the records suggest he might have been, let's say, his own best customer.
You could say that. The petty session archives, which are the local court records,
Yeah.
they're amazing. Poor Stephen, who is unmarried, shows up multiple times for drunkenness.
No way.
Yes. So you have this great picture. On one side of the street, you have Patrick building his flower business. And a few doors down, his brother's getting arrested for being drunk outside his own pub.
It just adds a bit of color to the family tree, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that chaos, or maybe let's call it spiritedness, it really ramps up when we switch over to the Crow side of the family.
The Crows. Okay, I was waiting for this part. We're back in Ballindooley for the 1901 census, and we meet Miles Crow.
Miles is a character who just leaps off the page. He's listed as a farmer in a second-class house. Now, that sounds like an insult, but it's actually a technical term.
Right, what does that mean in census speak?
It's about the materials. It meant you had a solid roof, probably slate, not thatch, and at least 3 front-facing windows. In an era when glass was expensive, that was a real status symbol.
So, like Stephen Fay, he's doing okay for himself.
He's comfortable. He's got a stable, a coach house, a piggery, a barn. It's a proper working farm.
Yeah.
But Miles himself, he was more than just a farmer.
Sounds like an absolute character. The sources describe a man who just fully inhabited his life. He had a black sheepdog that he adored, which is a nice detail.
But there are also records of him winning the darts at local village fetes. You can just picture this 70-year-old farmer sculling all the young guys.
But he wasn't just throwing darts, was he? Sometimes he was throwing punches.
This is that fightin' Irish DNA we talked about. There's a newspaper clipping about a court case, Miles Crow with his brother-in-law, John Farraher. They got into a brawl.
A proper bar fight.
Basically.
Mm-hmm.
But the absolute best part is Miles's defense in court. The magistrate asks him what happened, and Miles gives this quote that is just pure poetry. He says, "When I went to the public house, I saw no men at all, but I saw noise."
I saw no men at all, but I saw noise. That is incredible. It's like saying, it wasn't me, Your Honor. The chaos was already a physical being in the room.
It's brilliant. It's witty. It's evasive.
Miles told the court he didn't have a weapon. He said he didn't have a stick, just a little switch he had picked up at the fair.
A little switch. I'm sure it felt like more than a switch to the other guy. But it shows that wit, that refusal to back down.
So that's Miles. But the Crow legacy takes a sharp turn with his son.
There's a mystery in the 1901 census for the Crows. Miles is there, his wife is there, but their son,
John Crow.
This is Anna's paternal grandfather, and he's missing.
He's not there, so where was he?
The family story, and the records back it up, is that he was in South Africa.
Ah, the gold rush.
Exactly. He's listed as a miner on passenger lists. And while a lot of Irish guys sailed to Cape Town, the gold wasn't there. He would have gone inland to the Witwatersrand, the Johannesburg area.
Just pause on that. A young man from a wet green farm in Galway gets on a ship and travels thousands of miles to the heat and dust of the South African highveld to work in a deep-level gold mine.
That takes guts, real guts. The work was brutal. The society was rough. He was chasing opportunity in a really rugged place, and he survived it. He came back to Ireland in August 1912.
And he didn't waste any time when he got home.
Not a minute. He gets back in August, and by October, just 2 months later, he's married to Sarah Fay.
Patrick the Miller's daughter.
That's the one. Now, they were neighbors back in Ballindooley, so they probably knew each other. But there's another layer. Sarah's listed as a housekeeper on her marriage certificate.
Okay.
And since her uncle was Stephen, the one who owned the pub on Eyre Street, it's very likely she was working there.
So you can picture the scene. John comes back from the gold mines, probably with some money in his pocket, walks into the pub, sees Sarah. That's it.
It's a whirlwind. And that union is really the pivot point. You have the Crow resilience and that wit merging with the Fahey merchant spirit.
So you have the fighting spirit of Miles, the business sense of the Faheys, and this influx of adventure and capital from John. And that brings us to Anna's father, Miles Patrick Crow.
Born in 1915. And if you thought his grandfather Miles was a character,
oh boy,
Miles Patrick takes it to a completely different level. This is where the rogue element really enters the DNA.
This story actually made me laugh out loud. So Miles Patrick is sent to Galway University. The path is laid out for him.
A respectable path.
But his father, John, decides to pay a surprise visit to check on his investment.
Never a good idea for a parent to do a surprise inspection at a university.
Definitely not. He doesn't find Miles Patrick in the library. He finds him on the River Corrib, rowing, fishing, and apparently flirting with girls along the riverbank.
The report says he hadn't been to lectures at all. He was basically using the tuition money to fund a very pleasant lifestyle by the water.
He was majoring in river life.
And the consequences were severe. You have to understand, John Crow, he worked the South African mines. He had zero patience for a playboy son.
So he was expelled.
Expelled and disinherited, cut off completely. It's a classic story.
So Miles Patrick, cut off and kicked out, leaves. He goes to London, and then World War II breaks out. Now, this next part of the file, it sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Or maybe a comedy about spies.
Right.
In 1941, Miles Patrick Crow was actually jailed for 28 days in Britain.
Not for drunkenness this time.
No, this was political, or at least the authorities thought it was. He was jailed for trying to smuggle a letter out of Britain to a girlfriend in Ireland.
Why?
Well, during the war, communication with neutral Ireland was heavily censored. The British were terrified of information leaking to German spies.
So he was setting up some kind of escape plan.
Exactly. He knew he might get drafted. So he told his girlfriend that if he wrote to her saying, "London is lovely now," that was the signal.
London is lovely now.
It meant, I'm in trouble. She's supposed to then send a fake emergency telegram, claiming a family crisis, giving him an excuse to get travel papers and get home.
That is so devious. London is lovely now means get me out of here.
The magistrate did not find it amusing. He called it a serious breach of wartime security. But it tells you everything about Miles Patrick. A man who looked for loopholes, who valued his freedom.
And that desire for freedom kept him moving. After the war, we find him again in this amazing article from the Calgary Herald, January 15th, 1952. The headline is perfect. Irishman came here via devious route.
Devious is doing some serious work in that headline.
I tried to trace his path on a map, and it's exhausting just looking at it. So he leaves Ireland, goes to London, then South Africa, then southern Rhodesia.
Which is Zimbabwe today.
Right. Then up to Kenya, then across the ocean to the Seychelles, then Goa and Bombay in India.
And he's just getting started.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Down to Australia, he's cutting sugarcane, working in foundries in Melbourne, then New Zealand, Fiji, Hawaii, and finally, he lands in Vancouver.
It's a trip around the world before that was even really a thing. He's on ships, trains, who knows what else. It's a real odyssey. Claimed to have a girl in every port.
Of course he did.
Rule breaker, the wanderer, and then you have Nora.
Nora Bridget Maloney. And honestly, whoever cast this real-life drama deserves an award because you could not find a more different person.
If Miles was the rogue, Nora was the star.
The glamorous Galway girl, the photos of her, she has that old Hollywood quality. So graceful, pure glamour.
She really was. The sources call her a glamorous Galway girl. She was an actress with the National Irish Language Theatre.
That's serious acting.
It is. And there's even a family rumor that she had a small role in the classic film The Quiet Man.
Which would be fitting. She embodied that spirit. She had presence.
She did. But then she makes this huge leap of faith.
They met in Galway, probably when Miles was home on one of his visits. And Nora, the grounded artist, does something totally out of character. She quits the stage, leaves her home, and moves to Salisbury, southern Rhodesia, to marry.
She marries Miles Patrick in 1953 in southern Rhodesia.
And this is where we see the grit behind the glamour. Because moving from lush green Galway to colonial Africa.
Not a simple vacation. It was a complete dislocation. The sources say she suffered from melancholia.
That word melancholia, it feels so much heavier than just homesickness.
It does. She hated it there.
Yeah.
She wrote in a letter that it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. She was cut off from her landscape, her stage, her family.
That's powerful. Miles thrived in new places. Nora was completely uprooted. But, and this is what's so amazing about her, she didn't just give up. She figured out a way to cope.
She did. And her solution was incredible. She just refused to let go of Ireland. If you look at where their children were born, it tells the entire story.
It really does. Anna, our birthday girl, was born in Galway.
Nora literally went all the way back home to have her first child.
Then Sarah, the middle sister, she was born in Herrera, in Rhodesia. But for the youngest, Veronica.
Back to Galway again.
It's this constant return. She's living this life in Africa, but her heart, her anchor, is always back in the earth and stone walls of Ireland.
And she found new ways to use her gifts. She wasn't on stage anymore.
She sounds like she was an incredible woman in later life, devotedly Catholic, but she kept that artistic flair alive. She read plays for the blind.
Which is such a beautiful image. Taking her voice, her training, and using it to bring stories to people who couldn't see the stage. A mix of service and art.
Now, we've talked about the resilience, the fighting spirit, the artistry, but we have to talk about the Maloneys, Nora's family, because they had something darker hanging over them. The source calls it the Maloney curse.
This is where the tone has to shift a little, because when you look at the records, this isn't just bad luck. There is a tragic pattern here involving the Maloney men, water, and stone walls.
It starts with the water. Nora's grandfather, Peter Maloney, drowned in Lough Corrib in 1900.
The silence of the water. And then, less than 2 decades later, his grandson Patrick was serving in the Royal Navy in World War I. His ship was torpedoed.
2 generations claimed by water. But then the earth, the stone, starts to take its toll. This is the part that gave me chills. The reckoning on the Moycullen Road.
It is uncanny. It really is. In 1927, Daniel Maloney, that's Peter's brother, was coming back from a funeral in a horse-drawn trap. The wheel hit a stone, the trap collided with a wall, and Daniel was killed.
A tragic accident. But then you fast forward almost 100 years to 2025, just last year.
Gerard Maloney, 91 years old, a gentleman of nature, the family called him. He was killed in a collision with a truck.
At the same location.
The same spot on the Moycullen Road.
That is, I don't even have the word for that.
Well, for family, it becomes a historical footprint. It creates a mythology. It binds you together through this shared grief and this sense that history isn't just a straight line. It circles back.
That's heavy. But before we get to Anna herself, we have one final strand to weave in, something a bit lighter. The Duffy line.
The Duffys of Barna. And here we have a wedding, February 25th, 1876. Nora O'Malley and Edward Duffy.
The description of this wedding is so vivid. It says Nora wore a blue-gray silk dress with a fashionable bustle and a cuirass bodice.
A cuirass bodice. That is high fashion for the 1870s. Very structured.
And Edward was in a dark gray serge suit, maybe second-hand, but respectable.
You have to remember, these were tenant farmers. They didn't own the land they worked. But how they presented themselves, that dignity, that choice of silk, it tells you everything. They were saying, we matter. This union matters.
And they did matter, because that lineage leads directly to Anna.
So let's bring this all together. Look at the ingredients. We have the resilience of the Fahys, the fighting spirit and wanderlust of the Crows, the artistic, dramatic soul of Nora Maloney, and the quiet dignity of the Duffys.
All culminating in Anna de Marigny.
It connects, doesn't it? Anne is an artist. We see that in the source material in her paintings.
Which brings us all the way to today, Thursday, January 29th, 2026. The 70th birthday of the woman who carries all this DNA, Anna de Marigny.
And it's so fascinating to look at her life through this lens. You see these patterns repeating, these rhymes.
Like the geography coming full circle. Her grandfather, John, went to South Africa.
And Anna lived in Durban for years. She echoed that journey before coming back to Ireland. She lives in Galway now with her partner, John, not far from where it all happened.
She's an artist.
Which I think is just perfect. We started with Yeats, and he wrote about the brilliant creatures and the scenery. That's what Anna does. She lives in that landscape of her ancestors, and she interprets it. She gives it a new voice through her art.
And the family tree keeps blooming. She has 2 daughters, Sasha and Kim.
And 3 grandchildren she absolutely dotes on. There's a wonderful photo of Anna and her girls in front of Coromuna House. That's where John and Sarah, the miner, and the housekeeper raised their kids.
That's a powerful image. It's a statement.
It is. It's saying we're still here, we're thriving. And that is the ultimate victory of those ancestors.
So as we wrap up, we have one final, very important mission to complete. A message to deliver.
Yes, we do. This comes directly from her sister, Sarah.
To Anna, a very, very happy 70th birthday.
From Sarah and from us. Anna, when you look in the mirror, or when you're painting that coast, remember who's standing there with you. You've got the tenacity of Stephen Fayet, the business sense of Patrick, the adventurous soul of John the Miner, and definitely the fighting Irish wit of Miles.
And hopefully you stay out of the petty session courts, unlike the other Stephen.
Let's hope the only noise you see is from a great birthday party.
It's a beautiful legacy.
It is. You know, it raises a thought for everyone listening, not just Anna. We tend to think of our lives as these isolated things. But when you dig into a history like this, you realize we're just the latest chapter in a long, long book. We're shaped by the stony soil of people we never even met.
That's so true. The landscapes of the past, those stone walls in Connemara, they aren't just outside the window. They're inside us.
Exactly.
Anna, have a wonderful celebration with John, Sasha, Kim, and those adorable grandkids. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Anna.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.